And here we go. All right. I am your host, Daniel Crosier. This is Cafe Crash, and we're here with Kelly Shortandqueer. Oh my God, Kelly, every time I see you, I want to hug you.
Oh, I miss your hugs.
I miss
them.
your hugs.
I know we'll just go in.
Oh yeah, just and I just dropped the mic. Good job. I swear to God, what is in my coffee tonight? Not none of the fun stuff. Just the caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelly. Yeah, we miss you. Elise says hi. I know the Camp Crash crew. We can't be together and finish making some odd, cool, fucked up art. And of course, I know you from the days of Dink. But yeah, we'll go into that a little bit. But Kelly, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from, and how did you come to Denver, and how did you get into zines?
Sure. Well, I am originally from Philadelphia. So I am an East Coaster at heart, and I still have a bunch of that in me. But I've been in Denver since 2003. And so I feel like I've gotten a little bit calmer and nicer. But every time I go back east, it is all right there, ready to come back out. But thinking about zines, I was in college and was dating someone who was super into zines. And he would take me to his P.O. box, and he would always get all this mail from all over the place with like really cool, weird things. And I was like, what is this underground world? So I think that was sort of the beginning of it. And I was a math major, so I wouldn't have to write papers anymore. And so I have a math background, ended up getting an elementary teaching degree that I have not used, could not find a job, which was sad. And I think about teaching off and on over the years. But I so basically I started writing my own zines, which was this sort of coming back around to writing, because I was so much about like, numbers, I get this, I like process. And so zines actually kind of repaired my relationship with my creative voice, with, creating essentially. Right. And so James always had this big idea about starting a zine library. And, I was on board. That sounded like a good thing. We were going around the country, going to zine fests, and just like going around being like, we're going to start a zine library. Would you like to donate? And most people did, which is really awesome. Yeah. So I was about to graduate college, and I was living in DC at the time. And we were trying to figure out where we wanted to live. And so we brainstormed. He wanted mountains and I wanted a city. So we kind of were running through the list of Seattle seems too rainy. San Francisco seems too expensive. Salt Lake City's beautiful, but not quite the community maybe that we're looking for. And so then we decided to come visit Denver and see if it was the right fit. And I would say within 3 days, we were like, yep, here we go. Nice. So we moved here in 2003, didn't know anyone, and we're just starting to put out feelers to see, is there a zine library? Has there been talk of starting a zine library? Is there interest in a zine library? And so we were able to connect with some local folks, and it was really awesome. So Breakdown Book Collective used to be this community space that was really amazing, and where I met a bunch of my first friends in Denver. And so it was an info shop. They sold books. They had a lending library. They had shows there. They hosted events, all kinds of stuff. It was really cool, right at 14th and Ogden. Nice. And so we kind of like put out feelers through there and pulled together a crew of people who were interested in starting a zine library. So it was basically December 2003 is when we first opened our doors. And the zine library was a little shed in our backyard. unheated, and it was freezing in the winter. But it was like very charming looking back to be these like sparsely populated shelves in this like weird shed in a backyard of a house in the Baker neighborhood. So I think people who remember those times, it's like a sweet nostalgic thing compared to where we are now.
Right.
Having grown so much, we're about to turn 17 years old, the Denver Zine Library.
Gosh, you have a teenager and they're driving.
Oh, it's terrifying sometimes.
Next year, they'll be able to buy, tobacco products, have a firearm, and vote.
I mean, where do the years go? Our little baby is all grown up.
And usually, whatever you're into, they're gonna rebel too.
I feel like these are all about rebellion, so it's to be expected.
Yeah, true. Eventually, in their 30s, they'll come back around and reply to your phone calls. So. Oh man! Wow. So that's quite an adventure. It's interesting to kind of hear that initially that was really through you got impassioned through the lens of somebody that you dated and lived with and stuff, and kind of made your own. For those out there, can you tell us a little bit more what a zine is? Because so many people, they've heard the term, don't really know what it is. People tend to associate it with magazines and comics, predominantly. That's the frame of reference.
Yeah. So that is a great question. And I wish that there was like one specific definition everyone agreed on. But also the beauty of zines is that it's so hard to pin down exactly what it is. Typically, I just think about independently published media. Some people think that there are less than some number of copies. Like if you're printing tens of thousands of copies, it probably is like tipping into a more mainstream or more of that magazine-ish area. I feel like old school zines are a lot of cut and paste. I have one of my zines here. It's just paper. And so some of them are, and so basically it's anything that you can put on paper. And so there is a huge overlap between independent comics, poetry, other kinds of visual art. And there are zines about everything. We have over 20,000 zines at the Denver Zine Library. And we have zines about wrestling, how to, make your own pirate radio station, zines about grammar and vocabulary, a lot about politics, people writing stories, personal zines or perzines, which is what I write. So some of them are like journal style. Some include travel and recipes and like basically anything people are interested in, and putting it on paper and getting it out in the world.
Well, that kind of leads me to think of it in a new way. The way you described it is zines are actually an intersection in print media that is the gateway to all media. It's
in a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah, because it's it doesn't matter the topic. It's just it's whatever you want it to make. Yep. A lot of the zines I'm familiar with are like zines that center on certain scenes in the art scene, music scene. Those type of fanzines. Yep. Jim Norris and Matt Megacy. They used to. They met and worked together on zines, when they were, a few days ago when they were just young, strapping men.
Yeah. And
they're just a few years older than me.
Well, one of the really amazing things about Denver being this tight-knit community is that Jim actually gave the Denver Zine Library this box of zines of Denver zines. So there's like so much like rich history here, and our collection in the library is from all over the world, but it's amazing to know people who've been in the zine scene for a million years who still have the paper copies. I know there are digital collections, and there are like different ways that people are trying to archive and collect zines. But the Denver Zine Library is a hard copy, analog, old school zine library where you come in and take, like, actually page through the zines.
Right. That do you have a lot of people like participating in that? Obviously, donating zines, but also checking them out. How does that work? Do they check them out? Do they come in, read them? What's the process?
Yeah, so we do have a lending policy. So typically we ask people to come in 3 times, and then on their 3rd time they can check out up to 5 zines for up to 3 weeks. Cool. Things are a little bit off right now because of the pandemic, and so we've been closed for the last handful of months, and have been off and on trying to figure out how to open by appointment, but really just the main concern is making sure we can do it in a way that ensures as much safety as possible. So we're still closed for the foreseeable future, but the nice thing about the lending collection is people can come in. So we have some regulars who come in, take out a bunch of zines, and then they bring those back and take out more, and bring those back and take out more. We often have people who are traveling through town reach out to us to say, hey, I'm going to be here for this set of days. Will you be open? Can I make an appointment? So it's been really fun to get visitors from other places, some that have zine libraries of their own, and then some that don't, to be able to connect. And that's been one of the fun things too when I travel. I was recently in Austin in February, right before everything got locked down, and went to their zine library out there. So it's been like a cool way to sort of get your footing in different cities and see like what's going on. And so it's been in some ways that we're a little bit of a hub of people who are traveling, that they're like, oh, here's some zines. Also, what else should we check out in the city? Or people who call us to say, oh, I was just at Mutiny and they told us to come here, or I was at, that kind of thing. Nice. So it's been like a cool way to build that. Yeah.
That's cool. During like something like a pandemic, like right now, have you looked at archiving digitally online?
So we've talked off and on about it, and one of our sort of peer collections, the Queer Zine Archive Project in Milwaukee, they started out as completely digital, and then are moving to having paper copies as well. And so they started right around the time of the Denver Zine Library. So they've been like great folks to bounce ideas off of. And I think some of the things that we've thought about is both the time it would take to actually digitize everything, and then also the storage of how to make them accessible. And then some other things that we haven't come up with a solution, which is partly why I think we haven't quite gone this direction, is it makes things a lot more accessible in the time of the internet. And so there are some questions too around, do people, if someone made this random zine 25 years ago thinking, oh, it's gone, it's not, and suddenly it's popping up on the internet, what are the ethics around making sure we have consent? What are the ways to track down people who have moved a million times, because zinesters are notorious for moving.
You get into publishing, queries, and I can understand the ethics, because technically it might not be yours to publish in that capacity.
Right. And so one of the nice things we have is some professionally trained librarians who work at the Denver Public Library. And so I think having, I don't want to minimize zine librarianship, because we're considered a barefoot zine library. So we don't have institutional support. We're not part of a public library system or a university system. We're just kind of making it up as we go, which is really awesome. But it is really nice to have folks who are working in that world around, rights to different materials. What does it look like to, what's educational? If people are asking us to mail copies, we've had people ask like, hey, I see this is in your catalog. Can you send it to me? What are the ethics of reproducing someone else's zine or making it available? So ideally we're not making money off of other people's work. So, but how do we walk that fine line around being a library and accessibility, but doing it with, I don't know, doing right by our publishers as part of that process.
Right. No, that's, those are, great, queries that, you need to really go over and contemplate. I think too, being so independent. Ted just chimed in. Hey guys. Hey Ted. Being so independent too, you're able to curate what you want, even because obviously I'd imagine like Denver Public Library, they might not like certain things or certain perspectives, and with what you're doing, it might create a much safer atmosphere to share different ideas or different materials. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. I really, I do think now more confidently that that zines are kind of that intersection and to everything else that informs our life, whether we realize it or not. And some people might also reference it in the fact that when you were a kid, putting together your little booklet or something and drawing your journal and stuff. Technically, that was a zine, whether you made reproductions or not.
Yeah, and I know tons of people that as they discover zines, they're like, "Wait, I used to do this in high school," or I've grown up doing this. It's a great thing to do with young people. I worked at a summer camp and would use zines there and get people to contribute a page, and they got to walk away with something, in their hands. So there's so many options.
Yeah, I would also think too that it might be a wonderful coping tool too, like something, with people like experiencing like PTSD and exercise to just express your ideas, what you're feeling, and be able to tell a story and see where that goes. So yeah, I'm thinking a little. Oh, Ted, you're so fun. He says it's pronounced zines.
Ted.
Curses, Ted. We can always count on Endorsio to have a unique way to enunciate. But that's not the only thing that you do. You also organized, Denver Zine Fest, of which Ted and myself and my girlfriend Elise and so many of our comic book friends were, so privileged to be able to participate in. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Sure. So the Denver Zine Fest is an annual event where zinesters come together, rent a table, and have their zines out to sell, trade, give away. And so the first year that we did it was 2006, and it was primarily organized by Iron Feather Books, which sadly is no longer in Denver. But the Zine Library and Iron Feather were doing some stuff together, and it was at Matter in Lodo. So it was a pretty small, cozy event. And then each year it grew. So we did it in 2006, 2007, 2008. And then I'm just making sure I'm getting my dates right. We had done it for a few years, and we took this weird, inexplicable break. There was no decision not to have Zine Fest, but suddenly it was 2015. bunch of years just flew by. And one of our volunteers, Mel, was saying, okay, when's the next Zine Fest? And I was like, oh, there's nothing on the books. And I really credit her with being the one of getting it back up and running. And we were able to pull something together in a shorter amount of time than we had normally done. But suddenly there were all these local people making zines. And I'm thinking, where have you been? I don't know half of you. So it was both. Yeah, it was amazing. And so each year, so since 2015, we've had it each year, except obviously we had to cancel this year because of COVID, but each year it gets bigger and bigger. And we were bringing in probably 300 to 400 people. Our early days, it was like maybe 100, it was friends of friends, that kind of thing. And now it's like and it may be even bigger than that because we are a free event. There's no way to really track how many people are coming. Okay. And that has been one of the core values of the Denver Zine Fest, that we just want to make sure it's accessible to the public, it's free to the public, and ideally spend all your money on the zines. Come and buy that. And so compared to other local events, we really are a pretty bare bones type of operation. And so that allows us to be able to do that. But cool. This past year, now all my years are blurring together. Right. But I think it was 2019, we had our first featured guest and we brought Christy Rode from New York out. And she's an incredible artist and zinester and musician. And so trying to find different ways to sort of elevate and highlight folks who've been in the zine community for a long time to the people who just made their first zine last week, or they saw a Zine Fest and they signed up for a table and we want to make something and they don't even have anything when they sign up. Yeah. And so it's been really cool to see that range of people. Yeah. And then like you're saying, there's suddenly and there have been local independent comic shows. And so kind of seeing the merge of that. So was it 2015? I don't even know what year. Sarah Wilson grabbed me and said, I need to introduce you to Charlie LaGreca. Yeah. And there's this event called Dink and it's going to be great. And I think you two should talk and figure out how zines can be a part of the event. And so Dink is Denver's Independent Comic and Art Expo. And so I remember the night that Charlie and I were supposed to get together. I don't know if I had a cold or something worse, but I was like really tired, really miserable. But I'm like, I don't want to cancel on this person. We finally had scheduled a thing and we were going to meet up, I think at the Denver Bicycle Cafe. And so I was like, okay, I don't have a lot of capacity for anything really, but I'm happy to talk about zines, be a support. And as many of us know, Charlie's charm is it got in me. Anyway, I walked away from that. Too. Yeah. So I walked away from that meeting as the exhibitor director for Dink. And I managed, maybe 10 to 15 tables of zinesters. And I think I was in the zine director for 2 years. Right. And then there were some shifts and I was asked if I would be interested in being the exhibitor director. So going from about 10 tables to, I don't know, 150 or something. I don't know, some large number. Yeah. I don't know, table wise, exhibitor wise, it was growing. So it's funny because when I think a lot of people know Dink and I say, oh, the Denver Zine Fest is like Dink, but smaller. Yeah. And so I feel like being sort of brought into that world, especially focused so much more on comics and more of the visual art pieces, has benefited both the Denver Zine Library and me personally. And it's been really incredible to meet all these really amazing creative folks who are doing all kinds of weird stuff and so to have a little bit of a hand in that, or to be able to connect people, the relationships that were built with the Denver Zine Library, being involved with Dink has been huge too. So it's interesting, like you were saying, sort of this Venn diagram of all these different types of media with zines. I think that Dink really opened up that art comic side to me in ways that I had been like on the periphery of or dabbling in as part of the zine library, but it really brought a lot of that together.
Yeah, I think we're really just all kind of one big, family. I think that the language might be a little bit different, and the approach might be a little bit different, and sure, quantities of publication might be a little bit different, but we're all coming from, I think, the same place. We're telling stories, we're conveying information, we're lending our opinions to stuff. And Torcio popped in again and said, I heart Zine Fest. Julian Breyer is here, and he says hi. Julian just put in a wonderful book, too. Can't read to read it. So, and then Jason says, Dink.
Dink.
And Torcio added, without the doggy cosplay.
Yeah. That is one of the amazing things about Dink, and it being a bigger show is, the dog cosplay, there's the Dinky Awards, there's programming and workshops and music and all kinds of stuff. And so it's also bringing in all those other types of creative ways that people are doing amazing things locally.
Right. I obviously with COVID, you're not able to do Zine Fest. Dink, isn't able to, potentially, even next year. Poor Charlie. Well, not necessarily poor. He's in a better space than we are, being stuck in the U.S. But him and Amy are in Italy and everything. So if they're watching this, hello guys, I hope you're doing well. But I do think they're in a second lockdown. We'll probably be there.
I know.
Well, I know you're there, and technically we're there again too. But yeah, it's got to be pretty tough, not being able to put together your annual event. And for you, I imagine it's almost twofold. Well, threefold, because you can't have your physical Denver Zine library, readily available to anybody at a whim.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird time where I'm used to being in so many meetings and seeing so many people and putting things together and on the go, and it's just such a different pace now. And not having these other things to work on. And the weird thing is, I still feel like I don't have enough time, even though I'm home all the time. Like, what am I doing? And so it's interesting, like thinking about how did I used to do 2 meetings a night? Like, I had stuff going on every single night, and I'd have to be like, at some point I was like, okay, I'm going to carve out one night to be at home without plans. And some of that was socializing. Some of it was, all these different kinds of events that I was involved in planning, or, collaborating with different things, or working on my own projects. So it's interesting that it feels almost as exhausting, or maybe as exhausting in the pandemic than it did when I was like doing a million more things.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, but prior to this, you were also organizing another event too. It was it a square dance event?
Yes. So the International Association of Gay Square Dance Clubs, or the IAGSDC, has an annual convention, and it goes around the country. And so we had put in a bid, I believe, in 2016 to host in Denver in 2020.
Cool.
So we spent years and years and years putting together the biggest event. I mean, and prior to that, Dink was definitely the biggest event I had worked on. But this was looking at probably between 800 and 1,000 people coming in from mostly the US, some Canada, some all over the world, and other places, Europe. And And
awesome.
so, and with a hotel block that can accommodate 800 people, and with callers who are going to come and do full-time calling so that everyone can dance, to have other programming, things like that. And then sadly, it became very clear at the beginning of the year, things were not looking good. So we had to cancel, which is very sad. But making lemonade out of lemons, we ended up pivoting to make a home edition virtual square dance convention, which obviously was not the same. If you remember square dancing from gym class, middle school, I don't know, a lot of people. I did that in Philly. There's 8 of you, and it's like an elaborate game of musical Simon Says. You have to know what the calls are. The caller calls it, and then you do it. Anyway, it's super fun, super nerdy. Not something I ever thought that I would be doing. That I got sucked in. It is oddly fun, and it's really, really great. So,
how did you get sucked into that world? I mean, to me, it just seems so natural. I think for you and your personality. You walk into a room, you just light up everything, and literally everybody wants to fucking hug you.
There is also a lot of hugging in square dancing. Not during the actual dancing. A good friend of mine, Eugene, who I knew through some work things, had asked, invited a bunch of people to the open house. Our local club is the Rocky Mountain Rainbows. It's RAINBEAUS, Rainbows. And so our local club dances, or had been dancing 2 nights a week, sometimes 3 nights, and now doing 3 nights a week pre-pandemic. And so modern Western square dancing is very structured. And so if you learn, there's a set of calls for different levels. So there's mainstream, plus, advanced, and then there are challenge levels C1, C2, C3A, C3B, and C4. This may be too much information, but if you learn the set of calls at any given level, you can go and dance anywhere in the world that dances modern Western square dancing. And so a lot of times when I've been traveling the past 10 years of my life, if I am at a work conference, I'm looking up to see, is there a local club that's part of the IAGSDC? And when are they dancing? And then I can just go and dance. And the nice thing about the conventions is people come from all over the country. So I can show up somewhere and I may not know the whole club, especially there's people who don't travel for those kinds of events, but I recognize some faces and I know some people. And so I've helped organize a few smaller square dance events. Our club has a fly-in every other year. And so it's usually about 125 people, but we still have callers, and we've done it up in Granby at the YMCA there. We've hosted it, in Denver. And it's really fun. So I went to the open house and immediately was like, I love this. And it's one of those things that there were a few years in there I was not around as much, and I don't, life kind of gets in the way, and but I'm so glad then, I got kind of, as things breathe in your life and it goes up and down, square dancing kind of came back in as this big piece. And then with convention, I loved doing the organizing, and it was so sad when it got canceled. But as I mentioned, we decided to go virtual. And so my partner, Jake, and I decided, and this is, to be clear, this was kind of his idea. Everyone always blames me for pulling him into things like this, but this one, he was like, what do you think if we, and so we tried to figure out, should we do, is an hour a day? So normally it's days from like 8 a.m. to past midnight that there's dancing, there's all different kinds of other like evening events that we're putting together, all those kinds of things. And so what ended up, we were like, I don't know, maybe an hour on Saturday and an hour on Sunday. We ended up putting together 27 hours of programming. We had a bunch of pre-recorded pieces. We did Zoom sessions. We had some virtual square dancing, which isn't the same. But people, one or two people at a time on screen, and callers will tell you what to do. So that's a way that the community's been trying to kind of keep up some skills. And I know virtual square dancing is not for everyone. So square dancing is not for everyone. Of square dancers, virtual square dancing is not for everyone. So it's
sure.
But it was like a way that we could all still kind of get together and do a weird thing.
Is a lot of this, still available on like social media, or was just this like kind of a private thing?
It is, well, so you can see a lot of it on, we have let's see. So takeapeak2020.com. So our convention was Take a Peak, PEAK. So, we're in Denver. Take a peek.
Yeah.
And on there's our virtual schedule. And there are links to several of the events that were on our YouTube channel and our YouTube channel itself. So anyone can go on and see, some of the different convention memories that people were submitting. We've had some of the virtual square dancing is on there. And then some of the prepared information, or like the sessions. So we normally have opening ceremonies and grand march. So we found a way to sort of represent that.
Virtually.
And trying to pull in kind of like any of these events. There are the traditions and the norms and the things that people look forward to. And how do you make that happen when you can't be together? Yeah.
Oh man, that's cool. Yeah. I'd love to take a look at it. If you guys do something like that again, I'm gonna rope my girlfriend into it, and we'll do some online square dancing. It'll be horrible because you got this clod doing stuff, but these days I'm up for anything as long as it involves social distancing.
Yep, exactly.
Well, man, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you guys were able to pull something together and come together as a community, and and hopefully people were able to catch it and either participate in it, or like, oh yeah, this is fun. This is a way I can have some fun at home while I'm waiting for things to get better outside.
Yep.
But you're also an actor. I know this because I cast you in Camp Crash and made you do stuff.
Made me do stuff.
But that is a project that you and I have together with a number of really talented people like Bonnie Finley and Ashley Frey Lutz and Alan Cutler and Pepper LaGreca and Zach Bynes and Little Theodore. That's something I wish we could have figured out how to work towards finishing. But these days, clearly, I mean, you have your limitations. I have really bad lungs, and this COVID thing apparently really kicks your lungs ass. So
yeah.
So it might be safer, but one thing we've been talking about internally is like, how do we make this animated? Because nowadays it's starting to look more like a Rick and Morty episode.
Yep.
But yeah, that's something I really miss. Having you in there and always keeping. And I keep going back to this. It's like you're one who is huggable. So.
Yeah. Oh, I miss all those folks. It was always such like fun and weird. I don't know. But, yeah.
If it's written by me, it's gonna get weird.
Yep.
And probably uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable.
And not just because it was cold.
No, not at all. Yeah. But yeah, that's something that love to figure out. To get back to or change it up so that maybe it is just animated. But it's we've got the ticker going down there for denverzinelibrary.org. So make sure you follow Kelly and look into all the amazing things that you do. But it's it is interesting with zines, or as in Torcio says, zines. Yeah, I know. He's just not with the know. That it is, kind of a record of all these, people's or different perspectives and point of views. All of these, kind of unheard or unrealized voices. Whether they're just starting out or stuff that never really comes to fruition, perhaps. But the fact that they're that they're making something, and there's that attempt there. Mm-hmm. It's I've always noticed that comic book artists and creators, a lot of us get referred to as being introverts and not very outgoing, and that seems to be a characteristic that I've also noticed with zines. Mm-hmm. And I sit here and I wonder too. It's like with everybody, and like what you did too with the online square dancing. How fucking cool is that? I wonder if we should probably put together something where we're doing online zine workshops.
Yeah, and the Zine Library has still been doing some of our workshops virtually. Off and on, and a lot of that is just by request at this point. But I know that a number of places have gone to online zine fests, but it's a different thing, where one of my favorite things is at a zine fest is being able to just like walk around and talk to people, and stuff up. And so I think that people have tried a few different methods. So I've peeked in at a few of them, and it's still been a great way to get people's work out there, and for people to like network and meet other zinesters. And so I'm super glad. And the zine library, the Denver Zine Library, has decided not to kind of go that direction, especially because in the time we were looking at doing it, there were a number of other online zine fests. So we thought our energies are best put, promoting everybody else and trying to, support everyone that way. And who knows, like, depending on how long this thing is going on, we may figure out some other ways to engage people virtually. But it's always finding that balance of what, now that people are getting zoomed out and people are getting, that the novelty has maybe worn off of some of the things.
That's why you just now have to look at virtual reality.
Right.
The virtual reality zine. I'm sure somebody's working.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's actually being done. We just don't know about it yet. But, next Tuesday you'll get an email. It's like, hey, check this out. And it's like, oh, sweet. I'm going to do some mushrooms now. Not that you should. But the other thing, too, I wanted to, commend you as well is while you and Jake are at home, grinning through it, COVID with the rest of us, you took it upon yourself to help out your neighbors who were just having a child, right? And taking care of the kid. Yeah.
So I used to live in the house next door with Lisa, and Lisa and I met through the Breakdown Book Collective that I mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
When I first moved to town. And so we had lived together for 7 years, and then I met Jake, and she met her husband, and he moved in, and they had one baby. And so Jake has cats, and I'm deathly allergic to cats. So it was amazing when our next door neighbors were moving out of state. They said, hey, do you think Jake would want to rent, next door? We know you can't live together because of the cats. And I was like, I'm so glad you know all of my medical history now. And so 2 Julys ago, I think. 2 Julys ago, I was able to move into the upstairs unit. So it's sort of set up like a duplex. So the cats are downstairs. and never come upstairs. And then I have the upstairs unit, and Jake and I share the whole house. And so next door they have now a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old. And so we, have been hanging out with their kiddos, with the toddler, since he was born. And so during the pandemic, it's been kind of amazing. We've mostly watch him every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from the time he wakes up from his nap until bedtime. And then sometimes off and on the weekends. And so it's been really amazing. And man, kids are really good about putting everything in perspective, because I'll be having a really bad day and he comes over and he's just so funny and cute and like doing all these like fun and interesting things, that it helps pull me out of some of that. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't know how parents are doing this. Like, we work all day and then have him in the evening, and it's only 3 days a week. And I'm like, whew, one toddler is exhausting for just a few hours, and so we're so glad that, these have been longtime friends of ours. And so to be able to help out and be part of the family, and, and it's so convenient too, to be right next door.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, that's commendable, because, right now, so many people in those tough situations, they can't really, call on family for, various reasons. A lot of it health, risks. So, you being there for them, that's wonderful. And, so many people having to stay home, homeschool, having to send their kids to school during the pandemic. That's a mixed bag. I know my sister's kids, somebody had COVID, so they've got to quarantine. And since it's coming on, Thanksgiving week, or, at the end of the month, they're basically home for 3 weeks, trying to do the homeschool thing again. And it's tough, and it's tough for parents. It's tough on the kids too. So, in the meantime, are you still able to work on, your own zines and everything?
I have not been feeling very creative. It's really interesting. I feel like the pandemic has either given people the space to like do all the things they've been wanting to do, or like, and the other far extreme is sort of like being a little bit stuck. And so I've been trying to find other ways to, I don't know. I have not been writing, and I maybe should be trying to get back into that a little bit. But just figuring out how to, make it from day to day, do some things around the house, and I think adjusting especially to this new reality and figuring out, how I want to be carving out time for myself, especially now that, the big event planning pieces are on hold for so long. But even with, without that, the Denver Zine Library is still working on some different programming. We're going to be releasing a 2021 calendar. So we'll be offering pre-sales for that soon. So local artist and Jeff Waschenberger is the one who's been coordinating everything related to the calendar. So he's amazing and wonderful. And then we have some new merch on our store. So Hannah just ordered a bunch of new t-shirts and tote bags, and we have a zine distro with mostly local and some national zinesters. And so there's still zine stuff happening in the background, even if I'm not necessarily working on my next zine. Although one of the things I've been doing is going through a lot of my old files on my computer, and I have a folder full of zine ideas with some started things or some outlines or some, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should just revisit one of those things.
Yeah. Any gems or ideas? yeah, sometimes when I'm writing down ideas and concepts, and I go back and like revisit them, it's interesting to see what stands out to me, as opposed to when I actually wrote it down, and
Yeah.
it's usually those that kind of stick out that you start realizing, oh, maybe there's something there.
I've thought for years about doing a zine about dancing, specifically square dancing. And at the time when I was like really considering it and have some writing, I had been going to Charlie's. I had learned how to two-step, and I was doing line dancing. And coming from Philly, being like, the only music I don't listen to is country music, and then suddenly being like, all right, it's well, I mean, I don't love it all, but I do love it. And it was really interesting, because Charlie's is a gay bar. And so seeing, like, it's just such a different context for what I understood of country music and who listens to country music and that kind of thing.
Right.
And so, again, my friend Eugene, who recruited me to square dancing, had also, the two of us would go two-stepping and learning all the line dances. And so he's still doing a ton of line dancing now, and not square dancing. And I've still mostly stayed in the square dancing camp. But so I've thought about writing about that and trying to see what kind of comes of that. And so sometimes there are those ideas that it's like, oh, now is the time to do it. And so I want to go back through some old things and see if there's anything that's useful, even if it's dated as like, oh, I wrote this 10 years ago. Yeah, and I, off and on, like, I can't remember what zine it was, but I remember reading a zine and being like, oh, I should write a zine about all the places I've lived. So, like, where are all the houses and apartments and things where I've lived my whole life growing up, and sort of highlighting each of those. Trying to think what else is jumping out. I feel like the pandemic has lots of good stuff,
right?
Good, bad stuff. I don't know, like lots of content, lots of things I'm thinking about.
Right.
And like you were saying before, as sort of a self-care / processing tool, like zines can be a way to sort of get a lot of that stuff out. I do write more personal, journally, like, here's my experience of the world, type zines. So who knows? Maybe something will come out of that. But I might need a little more distance from the pandemic before I can go there.
Well, the nice thing is, there is that little sliver of a silver lining. As we talked before, we went live, with the recent, big, grudging, dirty election that, where at least, one old guy that, does complete his sentences, finally won out. And has policies, to address this shit, so that it's, at least going forward, come January 20th, can be, a little less impactful, as what we've experienced with massive federal neglect.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just so curious what healing needs to happen, especially seeing, I mean, the amount of like blatant racism and misogyny and xenophobia and all that stuff, and how many people are willing, like looking at how sort of the election broke down. What does that mean about who's in our communities? Who are we working with? Who are in our families, and how do we address some of those larger societal, social issues? And so I feel like there's always the policy change and the culture change, and how do you, it feels like they both need to be there, and so it's figuring out sort of that sigh of relief of like, okay, I'm also pleased with the direction things went, and also kind of disheartened with how also we got there. So how to hold both of those things, and
it's yeah, I can only imagine what it's been like, for you as a young gay man. Um, all I can all I can do to you right now is just apologize for us bullshit white male straight fuckers. Um, but one thing that has been interesting is I've been able to engage with, for example, my parents politically, and we actually have conversations. I haven't changed their minds. They're very conservative. They're the sweetest people, and yet their political leanings tend to be contrary to how they engage with people, on a personal level. And it's just like I don't understand it. I guess I'm not going to understand it, but keeping those lines of communications, at least for me, I feel it's a start. At the same time, we've got, that idea of having somebody in the driver's chair where we can actually work with, or we can actually shame to get shit done. Whereas before, the orange puck, just you couldn't do anything with it. So
yeah.
Except maybe set it on fire. I don't know. Maybe it's like one of those firecrackers where it just keeps growing and growing. I don't know. It's a bad analogy. But anyway, I'm glad that you and Jake are sticking it out, because you guys are awesome together, and I can't wait to see you guys personally. To give you a big fucking bear hug.
Yeah.
So anyway, Kelly, it's been wonderful having you on the show, and being able to learn more about what you do with the zines, the Denver Zine Library, Zine Fest, Dink, the square dancing. All right, so what else do you not do? What do you not do, Kelly?
I'm sure there are plenty of things. I have the bad habit of, if I enjoy a thing, I get a little too involved, and I'm like, how do I just be a participant? I just want to show up. I don't want to be in charge of anything. But I usually end up being like, oh yeah, I can help with that thing. I'm good with spreadsheets. So I've been practicing attending, not organizing. So that's been a nice shift for me in some ways.
Well, when Charlie gets back, don't remind him you're good with spreadsheets. You heard nothing, Charlie. Nothing. He's probably watching this in Italy tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, time travel.
Yeah, he's one of those futurists.
Yep.
Yeah, for those comic book fans out there, he's our Tony Stark. So everybody that has been watching tonight, make sure you go to denverzinelibrary.org. That's that flashy ticker thing at the bottom of the screen. Go there, follow what Kelly's been doing. The catalog of amazing cultural artifacts, as we all know as zines. And make sure to find Kelly on social media. He's everywhere. He's everywhere you want to be. Kelly, is there anything else you want to say?
No, I just really appreciate you having me on, and I miss you, and I miss all the people adjacent to you, and I cannot wait to be in person and we all get our overdue hugs. Right.
Yeah. Elise and I can't wait to see you guys. So, thanks so much. Thanks for everybody that was tuning in. Jason, Julian, Mr. Torcio, thanks for chiming in. And Kelly, thanks for being so generous with your time.
Yeah.
You probably have a 2-month-old to go babysit.
I hear the 2-year-old toddling around out there.
Oh, thereabout. Oh, yeah, that'll keep you on your toes.
Right.
The adorable twos. At least that's what we say in our presence.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Hang in there for a second. And to everybody out there on YouTube and Facebook, have a great night. Be kind. Take care of each other. We love you.